Three, two, one. We made it. Here we are, the very first episode of the Young and Pruitt podcast. We did it.
Pilot, baby.
Yeah, we are here. This podcast is a dream that I've had. It's a project that I've had for, I don't know, about 6 months now. I've been working on it every week, adding things. And here we are, episode 1. I am Zach Young, also known as Jackman Zach. My friend to my left here is
David Pruitt.
At Tall Guy Turbo is what he's known by on Twitter and Instagram.
That's how raw this is. I don't even know how to plug my social media handles yet.
Yeah, we don't even have an intro yet. That was the intro.
Yet.
yeah, that was the intro.
Can we steal with the King of the Hill music? That'd be cool.
Yeah, this is our own thing. We don't have the big studio stuff. Our website's run by us. This podcast is edited by me. So I apologize ahead of time because this is as raw as it gets. I'm on a NASCAR pit crew. David's in the marketing side of things. So, you know, we're the yin and the yang. We just wanted to put this together.
Two different perspectives with a lot of experience behind our voice.
Yeah.
That's the name of our game.
Yeah, we have some things to say. I have things to say. He has things to say. And we're just going to go with it and see where it takes us. The plan is to have different guests on, drivers, pit crew members, marketing people, business people, mechanics, fabricators, anyone in the NASCAR business, and some of the outside that we feel it would be relevant, to add the topics and the stories that might come.
Our listeners already know what's going on. With the storylines, they already know what's going on behind the tweets and everything else, but they don't know the people who make the sport.
Yeah, I mean, you've already watched the race. You already know what happened. We're going to fill in all the stuff in between. So here we are. A little bit about me. I moved to North Carolina in 2007 from Southern Indiana. I went to a pit crew training school in Mooresville, North Carolina, and I learned how to be on a NASCAR pit crew. I went to YOTech for the 9-month course. Wanted to get into racing. Knew that it was either going to be NHRA drag racing or NASCAR, and at the time it was 2006. NASCAR was at the biggest it had ever been. So I said, what the hell? I'm going to do the NASCAR thing. So I did some research and started seeing, who would go to the races, who would go to the track, and it was the pit crew guys that were at every race. Some of the mechanics and some of the fabricator guys don't ever go to the racetrack. I wanted to make sure that I went to all the races. I found a pit crew training school, came down, went through the course, and the rest is history. Worked for Roush, Red Bull, Germain, Gunbroker, Robbie Gordon, Roush again, Richard Petty Motorsports, which is where I met David here, and then now JTG. So, and then actually a brief stint at JTG before I went to Richard Petty. Now I'm back at JTG. So I've bounced around. I've done Hooters Pro Cup, ARCA, the Snowball Derby, trucks, Xfinity, all the way up into the Cup Series now. So started out as a tire carrier, transformed into a jackman as a necessity at the time because there wasn't anyone to jack, so I was the biggest guy there. So and now here I am 10 years later, a third of my life later, and that's where I am. What about you?
Well, before we get to me, let's hit you with some interview questions.
Oh,
we got to get our reps in with that.
Okay, go ahead.
So, how did you pick your pit school? How did you end up? Where'd you go, and how did you end up there?
It was pit instruction and training. At the time, I searched on Facebook, and back then you could put in the occupation and just search. So I searched NASCAR pit crew, and it came up to someone that was from pretty close to the same area that I was from. So I sent him a text message like, hey, you probably get this a lot, but I'm really serious about working in NASCAR. Where should I go? And he told me about this NASCAR pit crew school in Mooresville. And I came down, I toured the place, checked everything out, and I liked it. loaded everything up into my truck, moved down here, went to the school, and the rest is history.
Do you still talk to that character?
Nope.
You ever met him in person?
Yep.
Okay. Is he in the garage and around? Or?
Nope. There's it's a really weird story about him. I'll tell you
offline,
off the record about him. But yeah, I do not talk to him anymore.
Does it involve farm animals of any sort?
Not at all.
Well, that's very fortunate for the farm animals.
Yes.
Yeah. So how did you find yourself as going from a curious individual to beating out a hyper-competitive field and making it?
Determination mixed with ego. Some might say ego mixed with determination. I basically found what I was good at. At first, when I first picked up the jack, I didn't like it at all. Carrying tires was a lot easier at the time than actually being a jack man. Just, so I was trying to go the easiest route in, what was the fastest for me to pick up and try to do. After that, it was just hard work, being in the gym as long as I could, practicing as much as I could, just staying after it and going for a goal, getting up every day and chasing that goal.
What was your aha moment? Like when and where were you when you were like, okay, I know I can do this for a living?
Well, while I was at the pit school, the race was here in Charlotte, and MWR, this was back when they was, still a thing. They have tours that go through their shop. They had big catwalks, and you could have the tour and everything. Well, a part of the tour was watching pit practice. So while those guys were in town and the race was in town, they knew that there was going to have a lot more tours come through. So they went to the pit school to get us. So we would fill in all the blanks in between their actual pit practices. So they came and got us, and it was me and another jackman. Well, I ended up doing like 50 or 60 stops in one day. And I'd only been jacking race cars for about 4 weeks at that time. So I got a lot of reps, and I really figured a lot of stuff out. My fear of the car went away. I got all my timing down. Like, that was the most, and it wrecked me that day. But at that day, like, I hit my stride, and I could really feel like, okay, I got this figured out. And it was just boom, 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 and I got in almost like this flow state almost. Every stop just kept getting better and better and better and better. And I always look back at that day as being the day that, it really clicked with me.
Wow. So it was kind of just a random wind blew you into I would say, pretty random situation. Mm-hmm. And it ended up being...
Yeah, I mean...
finding your calling.
Yeah, it forced me into a uncomfortable position because it was part of the tour, and there was fans 5 feet away from me. They actually had like stands set up. They had like a fence, and then 5 feet past that was these stands. So the car would come in, and we were doing pit stops right there in front of these people. So I got rid of a lot of butterflies and a lot of anxiety. So
who was driving the car?
Just one of the mechanics.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't no one special. I think it was just that Thursday or something like that they had the day off. It could have been a Friday or whatever.
Fan day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we started at like 8 o'clock in the morning, and we went till 5 o'clock that night.
Ooh.
Just pit stop after pit stop.
Brutal.
Yeah.
Were you dressed out?
No, I mean, I was in my work pants and T-shirt. I mean, we weren't in fire suits.
That's good.
Yeah.
Because that day is normally like 90 degrees.
Yeah.
Miserable, humid.
Yep. But
welcome to Charlotte.
But it was a very big day, to really, really focus on just greasing the groove and figuring out what you had to do that day. I mean, I think that made everyone better. So that's the day that I always look back at as being the day and when it clicked.
Wow.
So everyone that pits race cars has that click. Some of them, it comes really quick. Some of them, it takes a while, but everyone has kind of like that aha moment. Tire carriers have that aha moment to where one day you can't put a tire on a hub, and then the next day you can't miss. And it's just something that happens. Tire changers finally figure out their pattern, and it's just like, hey, I got it. Jackman, they figure out their timing. Hey, I got it. It's weird. But everyone, I mean, I could get all the pit crew guys in here. You could ask them, and they'll be able to tell you the specific day or very general specific time. Well, I was on this car, and I had it figured out.
That's a question I'm probably going to ask all of our guests, because I feel like that's a very...
I will take that bet, too. I will take that bet that they will all know.
Drivers, marketing people, everybody... This is such a hyper-competitive sport. I don't think people realize that, like, from like a sport, even like a sports marketing perspective, like, if you go get a sports marketing degree and you can, A, get into NASCAR, and B, make it in NASCAR, you can go play in the NFL, NBA, anything, because that pressure, those deadlines, the small turnaround time, if you can do that in NASCAR, you can go do it anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, the work ethic is there 100% because we have the deadlines, we have the fast turnarounds, we have the schedule that's laid out, and we already know everything that's basically coming.
A lot of people don't realize that as soon as that checkered flag flies,
it's the next week.
Next week's already started.
Yeah, I have the next day off. You don't. So
nope. No, I do not.
So come on, let's keep this interview going.
That's why I sleep on the plane.
Yeah, we try to sleep on the plane sometimes. But what other questions you got there, interview guy?
I mean, I feel like I hit the big spots.
Okay,
that opened up a little bit who you are and what you do and how you got there.
Yep, and then we'll save more for later.
Yeah. So now do I have to talk about me now?
Yeah. How'd you get into the sport?
So how far back do we want to start? Because I could tell you it starts in 1987 at the Southern 500. Actually, that's a lie. I can tell you that it started the Firecracker 400 in 1984. There's a picture of my mom, who was pregnant with me, sitting beside my dad as Richard Petty is walking up past his 200th win to go meet the president.
Really?
That's a real thing. That's a 100% real true story.
So she's just in the background, or she's actually like posing?
So like at Daytona, they just happened to catch Richard walking up the steps to go meet
Reagan.
Yeah, and my parents were sitting close to the end of the row, and there they are.
So it was like a 1984 selfie. Did they kind of hold the camera out and like get him in the background, or?
Oh no, this was like a picture like it like down in like Level Cross.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So at Richard's shop, you were walking through there, and there's a picture on the wall, and you can see your mom in the background.
I'll have to get the exact, because it was like when I was 6 when I saw this picture, and I don't know the exact story, but there is a picture that exists that's been turned into a poster
that has your mom in the background.
That has my mom and dad in the background, with my mom pregnant with me in the belly as Richard Petty walks by.
And then what? 28 years later, you end up working for him?
Yeah, he started signing my paychecks. How crazy is that?
Wow. Small world.
So, yeah, I guess technically that was my first race. Now, my first race that I was, like, outside of the womb and able to, kind of consume and digest the sport was the 1987 Southern 500. I was 3.
Wow.
I went with my grandparents.
Do you remember it?
So the thing I remember most from Darlington when I was younger is seeing the guy sitting in front of us about 5 rows that had like a naked lady tattooed on him.
Oh.
And my grandmother was just kind of like, "Don't look at that." And I didn't even know what that was.
So it made it worse.
It made it worse.
Yeah, she brought our attention to it. She's like, "Hey, do you see that down there? Don't look at that."
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That was back when Darlington, the front stretch was on the other side.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember knowing about that.
I think our fan base is going to be a very interesting mixture of people, in the sense that there's going to be people who remember the Winston days and remember how the tracks used to be formatted, or remember going to the tracks that we don't even go to anymore. And then you're going to have the hardcore guys who are younger fans, but still have that same level of passion and commitment to the sport, where they're going to be completely in tune to current day stuff. And I think it's going to be cool when we have all these different guests here who offer all these historic stories and pieces of information that you and I aren't even familiar with.
Mm-hmm. So you're from Winston, correct?
Born and raised in Winston-Salem.
So you're from NASCAR.
I mean, man,
NASCAR cigarette country.
It's a blessing and a curse in the sense that when I grew up, they had the big premiere, I guess, like opening events of the year, like in January, February in Winston-Salem at the convention center. So all the Cup drivers would show up there. Their current year paint schemes would be revealed there. I mean, it was huge. Like I remember that. I remember going to a lot of those when I was younger.
Yeah, that was back in the days when they had one set sponsor for the whole year.
Yeah.
Now it's race to race,
exactly.
week to week. Much more simpler times back.
Much simpler times. And as
days.
a marketing person, I would do anything to go back to those times. One, because having one single paint scheme is absolutely fantastic. Because in nowadays terms, you are fighting and scratching and clawing your way into funding. And sometimes it happens with not a lot of time. And sure, you can bother your graphic designer and say, hey, I need something today that I can send off and get approved, and then we can get it printed and put it on the car tomorrow if we had to. If you really, really, really had to, nobody would be happy and everybody would be pissed at the marketing guy because that's, you know, who pulls the trigger. But fire suits don't happen overnight.
No, they do not.
Crew shirts don't happen overnight.
And what you mean by approved is you mean that NASCAR approves
Right. I mean, so
all the paint schemes.
So, yeah. I would say any item that involves a new paint scheme, a new sponsor, a new color set, there is like 4 different groups of people that have to approve that. You have to get it approved internally. So we mentioned Richard Petty Motorsports is where we met. Richard sees every paint scheme and either says yes or no.
And that's okay. So that's one. Yes,
so that's
or no.
one. And I'm sure Papa Gibbs says the same thing. And Mr. Hendrick and Mr. Penske, you know, they're all well in tune with everything going on in their organization. So ownership, one. Marketing group, so that's me and my boss if I have one. Fortunately, I'm that guy right now. So, and then the company that's sponsoring you, and then you have NASCAR. And this year you're able to upload it through the NASCAR portal and get it sent directly to the gentleman who approves these paint schemes. Last year we were emailing them, and you know, you just had to put like paint scheme approval design request, and then you would list out all the information, track, sponsor, attach the PNG or the JPEG, and man, that guy must have been overloaded. I mean, like way overloaded. Now it's a much more automated, streamlined system, and it helps. But yeah, I mean, to get all that stuff in line, and that's just the paint scheme.
Okay, so now let's do an example, because I know from working at Red Bull that from the owner standpoint, he didn't like all the contingency stickers.
Sure.
He didn't like those on the car because he said that they made the car look ugly.
Right.
Okay, so that would be something that the owner wouldn't like.
Furniture Row is a nice current day example of that.
Yeah, same thing. Doesn't want all that other stuff on there messing up.
Takes away from their image.
Okay, so that's one thing that the owner might not like.
Correct.
What's something that the marketing people might not like?
So, to me, and this is me saying this, and I've had the opportunity and been very fortunate to learn from very experienced marketing people. That thing has to show up on the television, one. Two, it needs to look sorted. And by that, I mean, you don't want your highlight colors overpowering your logos. So you kind of want those lines that work with the car to draw your eyes to the right spots, which kind of ties into what you're saying about the contingencies. Now, a lot of those contingencies have pretty decent money on them attached to them.
Oh, yeah.
If you multiply that over, you know, a season, I don't think I would personally sleep on any of the contingencies. In my opinion, I think they're all going to go away, and that's going to be extra area that gets sold by the teams.
Wow. But isn't it sold already because you're getting the money from them, right?
Correct. But I think it's just another asset you're going to be able to sell.
Get more?
Right.
Gotcha.
So, in the era of the impending right sizing, that I think that's NASCAR's preemptive strike, as to say, here, you now have more. Mm-hmm. So now, instead of all those contingencies that may pay X amount of dollars, you can go get one company or two companies to buy that section on the car and still get X amount of dollars. But now you're controlling it. So if I am, well, I guess Pepsi and Coca-Cola is kind of hard because you deal with, the Pepsi 400, Coke 600, and then Monster itself is the main Cup Series sponsor.
Yeah, but they're owned by Coke.
Yeah, 18% owned by Coke,
yeah,
but owned by Coke,
yeah.
And benefit from the Coke family and distribution models. But from a team side, that helps you can control who's on your race car. Mm-hmm. So if you're selling, and it works the same way with our podcast, if I have all control over our advertising, I can go and sell exclusivity. So I no longer have to do this default, Miller Welders, now I don't have to entertain Lincoln anymore because they pay their contingency. Mm-hmm. So I can be a complete Miller Welder company. Mm-hmm. And that's just an example.
Yeah.
And that helps me develop my relationship with Miller better. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you can do that with any type of sponsor, branding. I mean, it could be a charity, it could be anybody. Mm-hmm. But it puts more of the control in you as a team, with the overall goal that you help bring in more revenue.
Gotcha. Okay. So then step 3 would be the actual company.
Yes.
So I know from a paint scheme that we ran earlier in the year, they had final say.
Yes.
Like, we didn't have any control over it. They put the paint scheme together, and their paint scheme has ran on other cars, throughout the season, and it's all been the same paint scheme.
Sure.
So they basically took over.
And that's commonplace.
Yeah.
So, that's a very interesting point you have there. So a lot of large companies may have their own internal design team. And that's beneficial to them because they already know their brand standards. And what that means is what their logo is, how it can be used, proportion-wise, color-wise, if you can have anything behind the logo. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, Napa. If you see it on a blue, it's probably always going to be the yellow Napa symbol.
Oh, gotcha.
But if it's on a red background, it may be white or it may be black.
Or it might be the blue square with the yellow. It's its own sticker.
I'm not completely, 100% certain what their brand standards are, mm-hmm. but I know that they have them.
Yeah, and I remember the McDonald's M used to be tilted towards the stands on the older cars. It wasn't like straight with the car. It was like on the hood, but then like tilted towards the stand. So
okay.
then,
there you go.
So as you look down and as the car was coming at you, it was like at an
golden arch is waving at you.
Yeah, it was like at an angle instead of being straight with the car. So instead of looking like a 3, it was turned enough to where you could see the M.
Wow. I mean, and it's small cues like that.
Yeah.
That maybe we don't think of as racers, because really everybody who plays in motorsports is a racer, whether you know it or not. Mm-hmm. You're trying to beat your competition. You're trying to beat them on the track. I'm trying to beat them off the track and in the media and wherever else I can touch them being consumer fans.
Gotcha.
Anything else. So, but yeah, it's a pretty standard move to have a company do internal design. A lot of companies may outsource some of their marketing to agencies, mm-hmm. And those agencies may be large enough to have their own graphics design teams. But and the benefit there is you don't have to go back and forth. If you're the race team, you don't have to go back and forth and say, here, we're going to tweak this, we're going to tweak that, we're going to redo this. Essentially, the company can just say, hey, this is what we want the car to look like. Now, you may get into some fights with the team ownership.
Yeah, because, I mean, how familiar are some of those companies with actual race cars?
And they may very well not be at all. So you give them a template and you think this is going to look cool, but really it could be too busy. It could be non-proportional. It may not even pass the NASCAR test because, remember, they have to approve it too.
Yeah, that's where we're going.
So that's kind of where the team gets in the middle of that. And and you kind of have to be the liaison and say, hey, they don't like this, because there's rules with the numbers.
Yeah, so that'd be step 4 with the NASCAR stuff.
Yeah.
Theirs is more like towards like being safety and like the PC side of it, right? So
yeah. I mean, they have to protect their image.
Yeah,
and that's where that final approval comes from.
So like having the roof numbers be, you know, like a certain color, or the numbers on the side, so then it makes it easier on like timing and scoring and the spotters,
right?
You know, so they're seeing it as like the safety standpoint, and then also like the PC side, so you don't go get any crazy sponsors that doesn't mesh quite with NASCAR or the NASCAR brand or one of their sponsors, or, you know, that whole deal. So
yeah, sometimes the team will provide that artwork. Sometimes it's the company. You know, it ultimately, as long as it passes all the checklists, I guess it really doesn't matter who it comes from, as long as A, sponsor's happy, B, owner's happy enough, and C, NASCAR approves.
Yeah, because I mean, I could see the owners being specific enough to where like, no, I'm not having a green car.
Right.
You know,
or like Richard Petty, for example, he likes that swoosh.
Yeah.
And you're not going to have a car on track without the swoosh on it currently for Mr. Petty. And that's just something. And he likes his roof numbers to be day glow. Doesn't really matter what car it is for safety, so the sponsor can see it, the spotter can see it. And that's something I'm working on with my current team, is using that to stand out more. I mean, the guy.
Yeah, it does. It absolutely, because you see those two swooshes, you know, right behind the front tires on those Petty cars. Like, you know, it's a Petty car, just like the DEI cars. Those cars, they had
the 3.
They had the E.
Yeah,
they had the E on the side
that extended all the way down. Yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah, so you knew right off the bat. Red Bull was the same way. They had that little tribal design.
Yeah,
down the side. So
theirs was interesting because you had a blue car and a silver car.
Yeah,
which I thought was interesting, because the blue, historically for Red Bull, is what all their cars look like.
So you know why they had the 83 and the 84?
I do not.
The 83 is the sugar can, because it's 8.3 ounces. The sugar free is 8.4 ounces. So that's where they got the 83 and the 84.
Wow.
Yeah.
And now it's a BK racing car.
Yep. And now it's a BK racing car. But yeah, the original, so like when we were at practice, they would say, you know, sugar free or sugar, you know, that was the tell between the two teams.
Wow.
Yep.
And
now if you look at your sugar-free Red Bull can, it's 8.4 and the sugar is the 8.3.
Well, that's pretty fantastic.
Yep.
That's some under the ground stuff right there.
But I mean, there's always those little weird cues. My car number was my car owner's baseball number. You know, so there's always those little backstories behind all the numbers.
Yeah.
So you being from Winston, you kind of like.
So I was just immersed in it. That's what my grandparents watched on the weekends, and I'm sure this story is very similar to people within my age range who are fans of NASCAR. You know, that you went to your grandparents' house on Sunday. A lot of people would go after church, and you would have the family dinner, and the NASCAR race would be on. That's essentially the story of how I was just immersed into it. But my dad was super into it. My grandmother was super into it. The whole family, really. And that's just kind of what we did. And it didn't take long for me to become obsessed, with it. By 5 years old, I knew who everybody was. Mm-hmm. I knew their numbers. I knew who they drove for. And it stuck with me. And as the world changed and as we all grew older, like my friends may have gotten away from it, but I never did.
So was it like being like a kid growing up in, say, Nashville, seeing all the country singers and like one day I want to be a country singer? Was it like that?
Yeah.
Thing for
yeah.
you?
That's a very good description. No matter what I did, somehow, some way, I wanted to end up doing that for a NASCAR team, whether it be, working on the cars as a hobby. When I was getting into high school, Fast and Furious dropped. So you had a lot of kids, by way of that movie, found that their hobby was cars. Now, whether you like imports or domestics, or even a fan or not a fan of Fast and Furious, that was a very huge catalyst in what blew up the modified car industry, because it just appealed to kids who were learning to drive and learning about cars, or were on the fence.
Yeah, but the car culture as a whole had been like basically stagnant from through the 80s and the 90s, and then the Fast and Furious came out and it just went boom. I mean, yeah, you got a lot of bad with the good,
right?
But at the same time, like I remember when I was 11, going to the local drag strip, my brother-in-law had a Mustang, and it had 600 horse, and at the time, that was the baddest thing around.
Oh yeah,
like there was cars in magazines with like 650, 700. This was in 2000, what? Shit.
2000?
Yes. Yeah. And now if you have 600 horse, you're not even...
Yeah, you can go get the Hellcat with a warranty and drive your family to California with 707 horsepower.
Yeah, exactly. And his 600 horse, he couldn't drive, into town.
Right.
Without it overheating or running out of gas. I mean, the technology has gotten so much greater now. It's just mind-blowing. And it's because of that jump and that entrance in the car culture from that you just made it blow up and everything, to now to where we have a Hellcat that has 715 horsepower,
right?
That we can get in and drive to California right now, and not have a problem.
Nope.
Not overheat, not get bad gas mileage, not nothing.
See, growing up in Winston and just being around it, to me, I didn't have a choice.
Was it that bad?
I mean, that's what it was. Honestly, working the dream of working in NASCAR is what pulled me out of a early mid-20s depressive funk and got me back going again.
So was the mechanics side not there as much as the front office side, or did you go to the front office as out of necessity?
I would say that I hit a pretty significant transformation 2007, 2008, where I moved away from wanting to work on the cars and moved way, way more, just completely away from it.
Was that a fact of having air conditioning and carpet? No offense.
At the time, I was a practicing accountant.
Oh, well, there you go.
So there was that. I do enjoy the office environment, for one. Two, it became very clear to me that I hadn't been working on because you can go turbocharge a Civic, and you can be very competent at that, and you can be a very detailed, mechanic with all your tools, but you can turn the wrenches and tighten the nuts down and torque them and everything, but that still doesn't do anything as far as somebody who's worked on a stock car since they were 5 years old and can tell you what adjusting a helix on the spring does,
and be able to call that out.
Right.
Okay, it's tight. Well, what do we do now?
Right. I mean, you literally have people every day moving from all corners of the nation to Charlotte who have been working on cars for a long time, working on race cars for a long time.
Yeah.
So my chances of getting in that way were slim to none. But at the time, Winston-Salem State had a 4-year degree in motorsports management to compete against, crazy. Think about that. So historically, black college, which benefited from having Bowman Gray Stadium on its campus.
The Madhouse.
Had a 4-year degree open, and I didn't want to go to Belmont Abbey because I was still growing up and maturing in my own right, and all my friends were still there and finishing up college in Winston. So, it really just came together as a perfect storm for me to get out of accounting, which I was not happy with, which is not something I wanted to do, and help kind of write my passage, which is crazy because Winston-Salem itself has changed. It's now a biomedical city and an art city. You still have R.J. Reynolds headquartered out of there, but really the only mention of NASCAR that you'll see in Winston-Salem is the Winston Cup Museum. And it's kind of off, it's right there on the outskirts of downtown. And it's there, and it's full of amazing rarities. But, you know, like you're more liable to see somebody at 2 a.m. painting a mural in a park, dealing with current political subject matter, than ever hear somebody saying, "Did you see how bad Martin Truex Jr. spanked him last week?" So that, and that's really, you don't even see that in Charlotte anymore. You know, like in a way, like NASCAR still has its giant, large, passionate fan base that supports its sponsors, but it's kind of moving in a way back underground. Like it's becoming its own community, and it's just cyclical. Like it's going to contract, and a lot of your casual fans may go away, but eventually it's going to right size, it's going to fix itself, it's going to get rid of all the things that doesn't appeal to current day fandom, and then it'll puff back out again.
Okay, so now you grew up in NASCAR land.
Correct.
You went to NASCAR, you know, you tried to do the whole NASCAR school, but your first job that you got was 600 miles away in my home state.
Correct.
Indianapolis, Indiana.
So we should preface this. I applied to Winston-Salem State in February of 2008, which may have been the worst year for NASCAR. You know, you had your big peak in 2004.
I'd say it peaked in like 2005, 2006 because I started Pitt in October 2007.
I think you had the largest average viewership in 04. But I mean, it was still just gigantic in 05, 06. You had Talladega Nights. It was the second major large movie. You know, you had Days of Thunder, late 80s, early 90s. You had Talladega Nights that put a kind of comedic twist, which was in tune at the time. Just by the way, can you believe Talladega Nights was 2004? That's a long, long time ago.
Yeah, because I still think of the 90s as being
10 years ago.
10 years ago.
Not 18. I get the heebie-jeebies just thinking about it.
Yeah.
But so yeah, you had the economic meltdown of 2008.
That crunched everything, not just NASCAR.
Right.
Crunched everything.
So, you know, a sport that is driven, especially at that time, you didn't have the TV deal. It was big reliance on corporate sponsorships that all heavily contracted. The industry downsized, salaries got cut. You know, the way the viewership, people didn't have money to go to the races anymore because they were getting laid off. So
Still don't.
So at that time, I got into this, and everything was hunky dory, and then everything went all to hell. And like end of summer, gas prices were like $4 or $5 a gallon, and here I am in the middle of a career change. You know, 6 months ago, it was like the biggest booming of sport in America. And then overnight, essentially, it just kind of crunched down.
Yeah, because I was in the same thing. You know, I move away to get into this business, and as I'm getting in, like as the house catches on fire. Like I'm walking in, like as the fire starts, and it's just like, wait a second, what's going on here?
Right. So, with that being said, and just in general, this is a incredibly difficult sport to get into. I mean, it is like pulling teeth. If you are in this sport, you can probably go and do a lot of things because you have and obviously this is biased opinion, but you have a level of perseverance not normal to most folks.
Yeah, it got compared to the mafia a lot as I was trying to get in. You know, they always said it's like walking in.
Oh yeah, I'm kissing the hand in the ring.
Yeah, it's like walking into a mob boss and saying I want to be part of the crew or you know or whatever, and basically getting in. And then once you're in, you're set.
Right. So, but yeah, that first job. So, 2011 January, I, you know, fast forward from 08 to into 2010, early 2011. I had to go prove myself to professors. I'd put in thousands of hours of volunteering, internships, studying, got my A's and B's, stayed on the honor roll, the dean's list, just to have that extra card up my sleeve to pull. So when I actually got to do my elevator pitch in front of, influential people within the motorsports industry, that I could go and articulate and sell myself as somebody who, yes, I know I still have to prove myself, but this is what I'm doing currently, and this is what I can figure out how to do for you. So, first job, I impressed the right people at Don Schumacher Racing, which, if you're a NASCAR fan, we'll say it's the Hendrick Motorsports of drag racing. It's a large, super successful organization that just knows how to crush the nitro class. I mean, that's just what they do. So I went to work for them as a show car driver. And if you're wondering how you go from show car driving to being a director of marketing and communications for a NASCAR team over a period of 5 or 6 years, well, kids, I got news for you. It's the same way Chad Canales became a crew chief. He swept floors, and he swept them better than everybody else, and then he figured out what the next step was, and then he did that better than everybody else at that step. And that's
he was a tire changer.
Yeah. I mean, you just have to come in at the ground floor, leave the ego at the door, and say, I'm going to outwork the next people that surround me that I have to compete against. And for the sport marketing side, I mean, the more you learn, I write press releases. I organize events. I schedule drivers' appearances. Bring all the tangibles like fire suits, paint schemes, crew shirts to the companies and the leadership roles within our team to get approvals. That
basically all the non-car stuff.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm also the first person after final practice at the race car with a can of SD20 and a rag wiping off all the dust, because in my opinion, the way that car looks to the fans and the CEO of the company that's sponsoring me, it's my responsibility that it's spotless.
Yeah, because you're the person that's getting ready to take a picture of it to post it on social media.
So if that car's not spotless, I can't say, hey, it's the crew guy's fault. Man, they've got a list of a million things to do before they even think about pulling out a can of SD20 and degreasing and waxing that thing. So I think that's a product of having to work your way up, because if you're a marketing person, you're going to take these internships that are unpaid. You're going to pay for your own travel. You're going to pay for your own hotel rooms to go out and prove yourself, because other people are doing the same thing. And if you're not willing to do that, you're not going to get in. It's all paying the dues, cutting your teeth, bleeding for it, not sleeping for it,
Yeah, because I had a lot of that on the pit crew side.
Right. I mean, yeah, you guys
doing all the contract
driving
stuff,
all over
driving
the
to the
place.
races, no hotel rooms, sleeping in cars.
I was about to say, it's incredible the amount of, I would say, crew guys who don't have jobs that you see driving themselves to Daytona, paying for their own hot passes to get in there, paying for their own NASCAR license, and you see a lot of those guys.
Expensive.
Oh, it's not cheap. But then you see those guys on a car halfway through the season.
It weeds out all the ones that aren't serious, and it makes the ones that are really determined rise to the top.
Yeah.
If you're willing to go through, driving to Texas and not stop, no hotel rooms.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to leave at this time. We're not stopping. We're driving straight there. So you got to time it out right to where you get at the garage at a decent time when the garage opens. You do the race, and you get back in the car, and you drive back to North Carolina, which is 17 hours back.
Right.
No hotel rooms. I've did that twice, and basically, you just rotate them out. Whoever was driving, you're done driving, you get in the back, and then the next guy drives.
Right.
Unsafe as hell. I mean, other guys have gotten in car crashes because of it. But I'm not going to go as far as say that that's a part of it, but that's to the extent.
It was part of it for you.
Yeah, it was to the extent of chasing this dream and trying to be involved in NASCAR. I mean, that's what it comes down to. I mean, sleeping, you got 4 guys, 1 hotel room. figure it out.
Yeah.
And it's like everyone kind of looks at each other. It's like
everybody gets 2 hours in the bed.
Yeah. So it's like, well, I'm in a bed because I've been doing this longer than you guys. So you guys figure it out.
Right. Make your nest.
As you move your way up, I mean, that's what you deal with. But it really makes you appreciate making it, moving your way up, winning races, making money. It really makes you appreciate that because all the stuff that you've gone through to get there.
So yeah, I mean, as I get more senior within my network and my roles, there is no way in hell that I'm hiring somebody who hasn't done the same. Yeah. Like if you haven't, because at some point the season is going to wear you out. It's going to break you mentally. You're going to be done traveling. Hell, the Xfinity guys are going 20 weeks in a row this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Cup, you have 38 races.
2 off weeks.
2 off weeks. Trucks, arguably the best schedule.
I feel the same way when it comes to pit crew members.
Yeah.
Everything's switching over to athletes and football players and basketball players and baseball players. Yeah, everything's going that way. But at the end of the day, did you want to do it or did you get asked to do it?
Right.
I'm going to go with the guy that wants to do it.
Yeah.
Because he has the heart, he has the want, he has the will.
Because at the end of that race, when it's 95 degrees out and your money stops coming up, I know that guy is going to dig deep.
Because he wants it more than anything.
And he's going to find a way to make his time.
It's plan A, and he's still trying to figure out how to make plan A work. It's not plan B.
Right. So yeah, Schumacher Racing. Lived in the race shop. Was woke up by a blower dyno almost every day.
The blower dyno.
The blower dyno. It's loud.
So there's no exhaust. Is it on an actual motor?
No, it's the blower itself. They just measure like the CFM and they'll look at the airflow charts and they'll tinker with it until it.
So is it the blower like wah
yes.
sound?
Yes. So did that. Unfortunate / fortunate circumstances. Grandmother passes away. The same grandma who encouraged me and built me up and brought me to my first NASCAR race passes away. My third race in the NHRA season, which was really strange because she was like, your brother's in a good place. Your sister's in a good place. You're finally doing what you want to do. Like, I've served my purpose in life. And 2 months later, she passes away.
Wow.
So it was like really, 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 really messed me up for a while. Still to this day, probably. But at the same time, like, those are actual words that she spoke and looked at me and said, you're moving away. You're going to do your dream. Like, I've done everything I have to do in life now. And then she passes away, and it's kind of like, wow, I mean.
And now you're still fighting to not let her down.
Right. So that's extra, when shit got tough, and it's like, man, why am I doing this? I can go make more money, or my friends are, studying to be doctors, and they're going to go do this. Like, Grandma didn't work her tail off and support you and do all this so you could go live somebody else's dream. She did it so I can go live my dream. So there's a lot there that keeps me going, every day. But she passed away, left us some money. I chose to use mine to pursue a graduate degree. So now we're finishing up my MBA. So that's, in her death, still providing, which is very cool. And just because this is, as you know, it wears me out having to give up 1 of my or 2 of my days home from the week. I go to a classroom for 3 or 4 hours a night, and then all the other free times at night, and you work all the time and go to the gym and go home and study for 2 hours. You're sitting there reading books while your dinner's cooking. So it's by far nothing glamorous, but it's not going to last forever.
No.
So moved back, went to work for Octagon Marketing, which was the marketing agency that was in charge of Sprint's NASCAR activations. Didn't get hired on the Sprint account. Got hired on another account. Proved myself. Hung out with a lot of the people that worked on Sprint. Developed a good name for myself. As my contract ran out, NASCAR season was still going on, and they were like, we want you to hop on the Sprint team and support their efforts and throughout the end of the season. And just continued to impress. Re-signed back with the client that I was working with at the time, and that was March. One of the main people at Octagon said, "Hey, I heard you want to work in NASCAR. There is an opening at Richard Petty Motorsports that I think you're a good fit for. I'm gonna recommend you to go interview for that job."
So you're still living in Indy at this time?
Well, I lived in Indy. At the conclusion of the 2011 season, I moved down to North Carolina. So there was a little 6-month hiatus where I just took a part-time job in a manufacturing plant. Got accepted into grad school. Actually went to work for Charlotte Motor Speedway as a segue. So end of 2013 was when I went to work for Octagon. So 2015 March is when that opportunity at Petty's opened up. Interviewed there. Man, you want to talk about pressure. It's like, hey kid, like,
you're working for the king.
You're working for the king. We're gonna throw the fastball, hit it out of the park. So interviewed, and within a week had my offer. Went to work as the account manager and public relations rep on their Xfinity Series team
with Dakota Armstrong. Right?
Dakota Armstrong. So he hails from your home state as well. Very good natured young man.
He's from Indiana.
Great family. Came from a farm. So it was great to work with him and meet his family. End of that season, got moved to the 43 Cup car. Talk about a big jump. Man, that was it. It just progressed. It just kept progressing. Moved to the 43 Cup car. Still supported the Jeb Burton Xfinity deal while it was around until it unfortunately went away.
Yep, that was the car that I was on.
Yeah. That's how you and I you came in at the end of 2015.
I got hired the Monday after Thanksgiving.
Yes. So I remember you came in, and then we really didn't start talking until a couple races into the year.
Yep. Me and you first got to talking when they made a crew chief change, and he was loading his stuff. He asked me to actually help him load his stuff because he was going to go work for another race team. And you were walking in, I think, because you got there. You worked from like 9 to 5, right?
Yeah.
And I was there from 7 to 4. So I was out there helping him load up his stuff. And that was like my second day there. And you come walking in, and you guys got together because obviously he was the crew chief of the car that you were the PR guy for.
Yeah.
So that's how me and you really met.
Yeah.
was that day while someone else was getting fired and going to another race team.
Which, by the way, that is like standard NASCAR protocol.
Oh, yeah.
It happens all the time. It's
I mean, this...
All right, well, I'll see you in Daytona, but I hope it's cool until I see you then.
Yeah, so you have Black Monday. Which is the Monday after Homestead. That's when the silly season starts, and that's when things get crazy.
Ugh, there's heebie-jeebies there, man. That is a day.
But, I mean, at the end of the day, it's the business. Everyone knows... Changes are coming.
If it's not working, you're not winning races, you're not competing, parts have to move.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a million reasons and a million excuses. It's just
part of it.
Yeah, it's just the way it is. The only thing you can do is not take it personal.
Don't take it personal and always do a good job.
Yeah.
And maintain a good attitude.
Yeah, because I mean, you could do everything right and then the shop could close.
Right.
The race team could go away. All right, boys, we're done. And it just happens out of the blue. And basically, you just got to get back on your horse and go work for another race team. And that's how it is everywhere. I mean, everyone has a closet filled full of shirts. I mean, there's the rare person that doesn't, but usually, there's a closet full of shirts. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with it. But you move around until you find that good fit that sticks around, and there you have it.
Ride it out.
Mm-hmm. All the friendships that you make along the line, because
right.
Me and you are still together and making this podcast.
Right.
You work for...
Not even in the same series. I still see you.
No, but that's part of being in the Charlotte area.
Right.
This is NASCAR. You want to be a country singer, you go to Nashville. You want to be an actor, you go to Hollywood. You want to be in racing, you got to move down here. And then there's that outlier of Furniture Row out in Denver, and then Thor up in, was it Sandusky?
Yeah.
So then those are the only two.
Those are the satellite operations.
Yeah, everyone else is within 100 miles of Charlotte.
Which is interesting because both of those teams are doing actually pretty well.
Thor Sport has always
been a competitor.
Yeah, always been a front runner truck series. And then
Furniture Row is an anomaly. Yeah, they were a start and park team, and now they're
one of the only start and park teams. Other than, would you put Haas in that?
That's funny because that's like an absorbed team that became like, it was a start and park that became an R&D team that became a championship winning organization.
Yeah, just because Tony said, "Hey, I'm going over here."
Yeah, this is what I can bring.
That just shows how easily
it's all people, man.
Yeah,
it is all people.
It just shows how easily it can flip, and it's also money.
Right.
I mean, money and having the right sponsorship and the right... you have to have everything, but it just shows how easily it can flip. And I think we're in that transition right now, when it comes to racing, where a lot of the big names are leaving and it's starting to flip again.
Right. Changing of the guard.
You have Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, Ryan Blaney, Chris Buescher, all those young...
And you got a bunch of kids that are very well developed in the Xfinity series that are going to move up. Mm-hmm. And then you have a lot of bright spots in the truck series that are going to move up or be successful in the truck series there. So there's a lot coming.
And they're all fighting over, so we got Jeff Gordon leaving, Carl Edwards leaving, Junior's leaving, Kenseth doesn't know where he's going, Casey Kane doesn't know where he's going. All these big time veterans are leaving. I mean, Denny Hamlin's going to be the old man at Joe Gibbs.
Right. Yeah, think about that.
So that's
he's not old.
That's a changing of the guard. I mean,
I'm older than Denny Hamlin.
Yeah, times are changing. So you're going to see those. I mean, will the powerhouses remain the powerhouses, or will Furniture Rows of the world become the new gold standard in racing?
And if that's the case, do you have to be centered out of Charlotte to be successful? And how does that influence? Because obviously, all the people are here, the resources here, but he's proven, and given it takes a lot of money and logistics to make it work.
Yeah.
But he has proven that you can.
Yes, because he has that open book plan. He has that open book setup to where they're getting almost the exact same stuff as that Gibbs deal.
Well, they were crushing it when they were an RCR satellite team.
Yeah, they won, Darlington? With Regan Smith?
Oh, that was way back in the day.
Okay, so you're talking...
where Martin was driving, they were a Chevy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then they switched to Toyota. Mm-hmm. But, they were still crushing it as a Chevy.
Yeah.
So they've got something going on over there that you can't replicate with their primary teams.
No, and they pay a little bit more to get you out there. There's a lot of incentives to get the good people to go out there.
Hey, you need marketing people in Denver? Sign me up. You mean there's endless hiking trails and craft breweries?
But so what? So we're going to do the podcast on Skype? How's that ever going to work?
I'm not actually going to Denver.
This is the first episode. You're already talking about leaving.
I'm out. Sign me up.
Oh, man. So, when you have that type of resource and you have that open book deal, it doesn't matter where you're at. You can be in Bermuda. And you have the same good stuff, you have the same good quality.
So essentially it's proving that you just have to have an extremely stable, strong base, and if you have a capable touch to put your own twist on it, you can go out and crush it. And they're making their sister team.
Yeah, I seen a meme, the coach, and he was holding up a sign. I assume that it was Photoshop from him holding up another sign, but he's like in an office, like looking through the window, and he's holding up a sign that says, "Stop sending the good stuff to Denver." They keep doing good. They're going to drive a wedge in there.
Oh yeah,
those wedges happen within race shops,
right?
Let alone someone that is 3,000 miles away.
Why is somebody who has our stuff and is using our stuff making us look so bad?
Yeah, and
it's not bad, and it's such a relative term because those cars are still top 5, top 10.
Yeah,
cars.
they finished second,
right,
to him. You have that within 5 feet of cars.
Right.
You know, I mean, I can only imagine what it's like going on when they're way out there and all that stuff. But they're doing something to them out there.
Good for them.
Don't know what it is, and they got to figure it out. But that's what NASCAR is. It's streaks.
Right.
Drivers get on hot streaks, and everyone's just clicking, and everything gets rolling, and you can rattle off 4 or 5 wins in a season or more. Jimmy Johnson's just been able to do that the past decade.
Forever.
Yeah, the past decade.
Unheard of. So we talked about you.
Yeah, barely. I mean, you talked way more than I did about yourself.
Yeah, you should get used to that. That's a natural talent of mine.
Yeah, I mean, you went into way more depth.
So is Southern Indiana, is that pretty much Kentucky?
How dare you? how dare you, sir? No, it's the Midwest, small towns. It's very farm based. The soybeans, the wheat, the corn. The thing about the 2 counties where I'm from is really big in watermelons and cantaloupes.
In Indiana?
Yeah.
Watermelons and cantaloupes.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure I can buy this. I can't even.
We actually have, in my hometown, a watermelon festival. We have a watermelon queen.
What? These are all lies.
For New Year's, we do the watermelon drop, which they have this massive watermelon, and this is in Vincennes, Indiana. They take this crane and they have this massive watermelon made out of concrete, and then underneath it, it's painted exactly like a big watermelon, and then underneath it is a tarp that's like camouflaged to blend in with the rest of it. And then when it's New Year's, they pull the cord and a whole bunch of watermelons fall. That's the melon drop. That's the New Year's ball drop.
Has there been any casualties from the melon drop?
No, but there was a lot of bummed out people when the big melon didn't fall.
I mean, that's the one I'm waiting for.
That's what with like all my buddies are sitting out there, New Year's Eve in Indiana. It's cold,
that's a missed opportunity.
It's cold, we're all sitting there in the little town square next to the George Rogers Clark Memorial, the Lincoln Bridge, and this big watermelon, all these spotlights on it, and 5, 4, 3, 2, and they pull the cord, and we're waiting to see this massive watermelon that's wouldn't fit in this room. We're waiting for that to fall, and then just a handful of watermelons fall out underneath it. We're
yeah. But I think the disappointment from the giant melon not falling is the biggest casualty. I think that's a missed opportunity. That's big. That's a missed opportunity.
Gosh, I mean, it's highly dangerous. There'd be a lot of debris flying everywhere from concrete. It shatters.
I would even go as far as saying you fill that thing full of fireworks, and as it drops and explodes, is this New Year's? Are we trying to softly bring in new opportunity?
Yeah. So that's my hometown. My family had tomatoes primarily, but also with the watermelons and the cantaloupes. That's what your summer job was. I was driving a tractor when I was 7. So if you've never seen a watermelon field, basically they lay down plastic. Have you ever seen that before?
I haven't.
Okay, so they take black plastic in a sheet maybe, 3 feet wide, and they have a plastic layer pulled behind a tractor, and it lays a 1.5 strips of these lanes. And what the plastic does, because where I'm from, the ground is sand. It's sand just like when you go over here to the beach. I mean, you reach down, you grab a handful of dirt, looks just like beach sand. So what that plastic does is that plastic holds in the moisture. So you'll have 4 to 5, sometimes 6 rows of the plastic, and then you'll have a strip of rye that they lay down, and the rye grows up real tall to cut the wind down so the vines of the watermelons don't get turned over. So
this is genius.
Yes. Okay. So now when you have your plastic laid down, then you have to set the plants. The plants are planted in the greenhouse, and then they're put into trays. It looks like a big egg sheet, and each plant has its own little cup, and you sit down, and I wish I could show you a picture of this, but basically 2 guys are sitting there, and they got like this big slanted board, and all the trays are sitting at it, and it's set at like a 45-degree angle. So as you pull the trays off, the next one slides down. So imagine you're about 3 inches off the ground, and there's this wheel that comes along and punches a hole in the plastic, pulls out the dirt, and then all you do is you just drop the plant in and keep going. And you plant 1 million of these things. Okay, so every so many feet. Okay, now as the watermelons start to grow, a watermelon's a vine. You have to walk down through there with a stick, and you quote quote turn vines. And what you do is you flip the vines up onto the plastic. So then when the tractor goes by, the tractor's not running over the vines. And you want all the plants to grow together, because when they do that, then they're stronger. Then they can't be flipped upside down. When they flip upside down, then the sun will burn the vines and kill the vines. They're okay when they're right side up, but when they get flipped upside down, the sun will burn them out.
I was not prepared. I did not know watermelons were so intense.
Yeah, and I mean, you're talking hundreds and hundreds of acres of these watermelon plants. Cantaloupes are the same way. They're starting to plant pumpkins the same way, because basically the pumpkins they're a little bit bigger. So a lot of the equipment still crosses over.
I'm actually going to backtrack on the watermelon celebration. Mm-hmm. I don't think we need to draw watermelons at all anymore. This is way too intense to be wasting watermelons like that. We need to bust pumpkins now.
Dude, they're everywhere. So now when it comes time to pick them, that rye strip gets cut down, bush hogged. So then the tractor pulls 1 or 2 wagons behind it. That was the old way of doing it. Now what they do is they go get old school buses, and they cut the sides off of the school buses. They leave the roof, they cut the sides off, take all the seats out, take everything out, put like hose around the top so you don't have the edge of the metal there. And basically you have crews go in, and you have some guys inside the school bus, and then you have guys in each row to the right and left of this rye strip, where the tractor goes, and then you just toss watermelons. How you toss sandbags, that's the same thing. And you walk this whole field just tossing them in. If you're the one that's down on the ground, you're the judge on whether or not that watermelon's ready to be picked or not. So you have to know by the look and the size and the sound of it on whether or not it's good to go. Because if you pick it premature, it's not worth anything. So
now that I've heard about this, there's going to be watermelon jokes tied into pretty much every single one of these podcasts.
That's fine.
Maybe this county needs to get up on this podcast. I will push watermelons all day long. Only the best watermelons come from Indiana.
There you go. So yeah, I mean, like I was saying, that that the watermelons and cantaloupes, and they're starting to do pumpkins now. I remember that watermelons, when I was a kid, they were a lot bigger. And now everything's switched over to the small seedless, because now people want them to fit in the refrigerator. Before they would get them and they would cut them and then they would put them in the fridge. But now they want to just be able to stick the whole watermelon in their fridge and be done with it. So now you're starting to get into the smaller seedless, because no one wants to deal with the seedless water, or with the seeded watermelons. It's easier just to quote genetically modify the seeds out of them, which there are still seeds. It's a hybrid. The seeds aren't going to do anything. They're not viable seeds. So from watermelon country to tobacco country, what does a tobacco field look like?
Ooh.
Because there was a few tobacco fields in central Indiana and some in Kentucky, but they're not very big, and I always see the barns with them all hanging up in there. I don't know if you know the process that you can kind of explain.
I don't.
It to.
I was never a.
Yeah, you let me down.
I wasn't forced to do blue collar labor as a child.
But was it around?
Oh, it was around. Yeah, you saw it all the time.
So would you see like?
So it's just this big, long, expansive field. And being from Winston-Salem, everything's kind of like small rolling hills, and they were just planted in lines, and they got to be so big. Mm-hmm. Then you would go pick them by hand.
Had to go out and cut the stalks down?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now,
machete style?
Pretty much every parent in that day and age at some point was probably in a tobacco field somewhere around Winston-Salem, and they said their hands would bleed, and you'd be covered in nasty grasshoppers that would be spitting tobacco juice on you. Mm-hmm. And then you would take these and you would cure them in the barns, which, by the way, like my life goal, #life goals, is to own a piece of property with an old tobacco farm in it, old tobacco barn on it, that I kind of restore from the inside out and keep that kind of rusty old barn look at on the outside, but have like a fully functioning like race shop / man cave on the inside.
That'd be awesome.
That'd be sweet.
I think it'd be a little bit more redoing, because I think those things were made to not so much cut the, like, just to keep the rain off of them, basically, just to keep them dry.
I mean, it was, you wanted the humidity, you wanted these things to cure, you know, you wanted the heat to stay in there, and they never fall. I mean, they would be as raggedy looking as possible, but these things just never seem to fall, man. Like quality.
Yeah, quality. Yeah, I do know what is getting ready to fall down. That's me. Let's go ahead and wrap this up. You can find us, you can find me at JackmanZack on Twitter and Instagram. My man David over here,
Tall Guy Turbo, on both as well.
I'm going to have the website up really shortly, youngandpruitt.com. That's youngandpruitt.com. And this is the Young and Pruitt podcast, episode 1. See ya.